Hi there and welcome back to another episode at Station Road. Now today we get into the last little bit of track laying, and this is for the lower loop that cuts through underneath the upper layer of the layout in the same location as the original main lines used to run. So this episode really marks the beginning of where we get into some of the scenic side of the layout extension. So one particular area in this lower loop is an exposed scenic area, which is essentially a deep cutting that runs through with brick retaining walls either side. So in this video I'll be showing a particular technique I use to prepare for the scenic treatments within this cutting. So I think without further ado, let's just crack into it. So the area we're going to tackle in this episode finally is this lower loop that takes the path of the original main lines before the extension was built and this particular area got torn up. So we can look back and actually see some old footage here of how it used to look. And originally it had two tracks, an up and down line. There was a overbridge and then we had twin portal tunnels. So the line will come off from that point there. It will run underneath the main lines across here, under the main lines again, and through that area there where the goods shed and goods yard sits on top, and then connect back on to the main line. So there's a strip of track substrate there which is ready to go into this area underneath here, and I've just got to tidy up some wiring in there from some points. And then also when it comes to laying the track, of course I've got to calculate out where the track is actually going to go to avoid these point motors that are underneath. So although there will be two tracks running through here, one of them will be disused. So the idea is that I want to create another disused bit of line, so there will just be one track that is operational that will run through here. And we're going to use the same process that I've done in many other areas, and we'll create some cardboard templates first to map out what shapes we need for the substrate. And also this access area that I'm actually standing in right now will be part of this project. This will be a lift out section where I can gain access if need be. So looking at the area from another angle, the single line with the disused second line will run through under here and out through here and reconnect onto the main line through here. So in a previous video, and I'll pop a link up in the top corner there, I worked on some brick retaining wall. Now this is from a Metcalf viaduct kit. So that was this particular kit here, where I've just actually used the facing arches and then also the internal brickwork to create some retaining walls. And the great thing about this is that you get twice the amount of retaining wall because you're using both sides of the viaduct kit. So that is replacing these items here that were pulled out of the original cutting that ran through, and these are the pieces from the overhead bridge. Now I'm not going to reuse these, I am going to make up some new bridge facings, but of course I've kept these so that I can get the correct shape or dimensions. And then we had these twin portal tunnels as well. Now I'm not quite sure whether I'm going to reuse these. It really depends on the track alignment which needs to work around the point motors. So I might have to use a different type of portal for there. So the first step will be getting this piece of substrate in, because that's all cut and ready to go. Now this is actually on a elevated section, so this is of course coming down on a reasonably shallow gradient through down under here, so I need to get the risers at the correct height to get a reasonable incline through here, and of course the Scenic section down there will be on a level track bed. So I've now made up a cardboard template for this section of the track bed, and I'm going to make this section initially a lift out section. So the idea is I can take this into the house and work on it in the evenings without having to work on it out here in the cold winter months. And then once all the Scenic side of it is all complete, then when I position it in here, it will then become fixed permanently. So making up the cardboard template, as I've done in other areas of this extension, just sort of eliminates any issues with fitting the actual substrate when I cut this out shortly. So it's almost sort of really like test fitting these shapes to fit. So we have a nice snug fit of the cardboard, which means I'm confident now that I can go and cut out the actual timber track bed substrate and position that in there. So now we have a clearer idea of the actual track bed, where the lines will come underneath and essentially where the original track used to be, and then coming up the incline here, which will be probably my steepest gradient. So this loop line may be limited in terms of locomotives that can use it. Right, so we've now got the MDF track bed positioned in here, and I've got some of the retaining wall that was previously assembled in a video some time back. This is the original overhead bridge, or at least one side of it, and I'm not going to use these, and this sort of indicates how wide the original cutting or trench was that ran through here. Now I'm actually thinking I'm going to reduce the width of this, because it's almost borderline the width for 3 tracks to run through here. So I'm thinking of bringing the wall in possibly somewhere about here. Now you'll see that either side of the retaining walls are different heights, so on this side we're actually going to be a bit higher up, and there's actually going to be a bit of a hill that's going to come up over this area here, and it'll possibly be where the church will actually go back. So roughly where I'm standing right now is where the church used to be. This originally across here used to be a bridge, and it was just a 2-track bridge, and then there was another additional track on a separate bridge. So there were 2 bridges that went through here. Now I'm going to actually do away with this being a bridge completely, and there'll be some more tunnel portals or something that will go straight into here, because on the other side here is going to be more industrial scene, and then the back scene will actually come down here. So this area here will actually be covered over. So this will no longer be a bridge. So you've really just got this opening through here, and then people are going to ask me, said, well, what's the point? There's very little space left really to see anything. And I did think about just simply covering the whole thing over and putting scenery and scenics on this upper level initially, but I'm sticking with it because I still like the idea of seeing a little bit more of the multi-level aspect of the layout actually within juxtaposition of the upper level as well at the same time. And it's also another opportunity for me to do some interesting scenic options in here, in terms of maybe having, well, at least one of these tracks that'll run through here will be a disused track. So the idea here, as I mentioned earlier, was that I will assemble up the base structure of this to a certain degree, but not actually permanently fix it in, so that what I can do is lift the whole thing out, work on the scenic side of it, because we're in such an awkward area here, and I could just imagine myself spending hours bending over trying to get in here to do all the detailing in here. So this is why this whole section will be a lift out section, take it inside, work on it at the dining table, and once it's all ready to go, then I'll put it back in here and permanently fix it in place. So the idea is, what I'll do is I'll actually lay the track all the way through here, and we've got some Pico SL100 to run through here, and then once the track is laid, and I may actually glue the track at this position really, I will then get out my Dremel and cut the rails. So in theory what we should end up with is a perfect join, so that when this goes back into place it should be all beautifully lined up, and then of course I can just hook up some dropper wires for this particular area. So I'm just going to mark out some areas here now in terms of getting some right angles for this overhead bridge. That's going to give me some idea of dimensions of building a new bridge for here, and also sort of lining it up better with the height of these retaining walls. So I've now secured the retaining walls on this side of the cutting, and I've secured a piece of timber across the back here, and of course this will allow for a framework to sit on top that will lift on and off, which is basically where I'm standing at the moment. There will be some continuation, a little bit more of Metcalf retaining wall kit here. We're going to have a 2-portal tunnel as opposed to just a single double portal, because what I want to actually do, and it's mainly because of this threaded rod that's right smack in the middle here of one of these portals, I'll actually have bricked up, or it'll have a gate over it or something like that to basically say it's not in operation any longer. This track here on this side will be derelict and overgrown and so forth, whereas the track on this side will still be in use. So these retaining walls on this side, they will be fixed in, probably one of the last things I actually do once this all goes back into place. So at the moment we can set them aside, and what we have here, this is the unit which we can take into the house and do all the scenic work on, and of course build a overhead bridge as well. But the first thing I'm actually going to do now is put this back in here and map out where all the track is going to go, secure the track down, and then I can sever the sections of track where this unit comes out. So in order to lay this track through here, what I'm going to do is clamp this removable section down so that doesn't shift or get knocked about, and we'll start from that curve coming in that way, and then also behind the camera come back from the other way and meet somewhere possibly through here and see how that goes. So we now have the track completed and it's all fixed into place, and I'm just testing it now with one of my more recent acquisitions, a second-hand Class 37 by ViTrains, or ViTrains, however it's pronounced. And so far so good. All the track is working perfectly and no derailments at this stage. So this is the ViTrains model that I've managed to pick up second hand, actually locally within New Zealand, which was quite interesting as well. And we all know that the ViTrains 37s did have a rather dogged history in terms of things falling off and falling apart, but apart from that they had a pretty solid mechanism, and that I can certainly agree with. So now that we've got this track in place, the next step will be actually to cut the track in this lift out section and theoretically lift it out, and then I can work up the scenery side of it indoors or in a different location. Right, so now that we've tested it, well, I've just run one train through it, and it's a bit of a tricky locomotive, that ViTrains Class 37, so if it can get through this track, then pretty much any of my other locomotives can. So we've got Dremel here, so we're going to carefully cut these rails. One of the things about using one of these is the main thing is not to linger too long when you're actually cutting through the rail, because of course the amount of heat generated from cutting the rail is it can actually melt the plastic chairs on the sleepers, so you kind of have to be quite quick cutting through it. So we'll give this a go and see what happens. Right, I'm just going to cut some of the sleepers, which I'll just do with a craft knife, and we'll get it out. It's a bit tricky actually working out where the best place to cut it is because of these unusual angles that I've got in here, but we'll take a closer look at that when I get it out. So there we have the cuts at each end. This end, because there's less of an angle, it's certainly worked out a lot better. And what I've done is let the track on this section overlap onto the fixed permanent section for easy installation. Down the other end, a little bit of a different story here. Nonetheless, it's still more or less worked out, but I've really sort of in the end decided to split two of the sleepers because of the greater angle we have to deal with here. And of course this can all be tidied up and touched up once this section is permanently fixed in. And there is the gap for the overhead bridge. So one more step here that I'm going to take before I get onto any of the other construction stuff is actually to spray paint all of this just in a sort of a dirty blackish grey colour, which essentially is going to do the sides of the rails and the sleepers as well. I'd imagine that the line through this cutting could be actually quite filthy and unkept. So this is different to usually what I would normally do here, is paint this MDF first before I lay the track, and in hindsight maybe I should have done that. The reason why it's quite important to do that, particularly with MDF, is that when it comes to ballasting and you pour on lots of liquid glue, it will soak into the MDF. So we've got some dropper wires now installed, which I've just attached at this location here, and we'll just whiz over this with a spray can. So we've now got the track substrate spray painted, and I used this here, which is Belton Molotow Premium, and I bought it a while ago from an art store. I thought I'd give it a go, try it out. It's meant to be quite a matte sort of finish, and it has actually come up very, very matte and finish, which is good. And it's a black grey neutral, so I've used that, and I've also actually just used a little bit of Tamiya flat paint, which is dark earth, and just to create a little bit of a blend. So inevitably, when it comes to altering an area of an existing layout, you do get presented with some challenges and unforeseen issues that come up. Now, I've heard there's two types of railway modeller out there. There is the railway modeller who will plan their layout into considerable detail before they even begin looking at building anything, and that's down to the sort of the nth degree and accurate measurements and so forth, and essentially have an entire plan and layout on paper beforehand. Now, to a degree, I did do that with this layout, but it is also a layout that sort of tends to morph over time, and when I think I might have an area that is secure and safe from any form of future disruption, lo and behold, I come across an area that is not. So here, in this area where the goods assembly yard and cattle stage that goes here and so forth, I have discovered that because of this new incline, which meets the new incline on the outside, which is just here in the corner, it is slightly higher than what was originally here, and so we have a very, very close fit here where the locomotives pass underneath. And I'm using this particular locomotive, which is the ViTrains Class 37, because it has these horns that protrude quite high out of the cab roof, and so if this locomotive can get under, pretty much everything else can. Now, it's fine here, but as it comes up towards this level here, where the level ground used to run straight across here, it of course is just simply not going to work. So as an unplanned extra to this particular area, I am going to have to rebuild this area. So I've sort of rather crudely hacked out the pathway for these lower lines, so we have known clearances, and I'm going to have to extend this hill out further, and it may actually butt up against the side of this brick wall here a little bit towards the back, and then it'll extend out, and then there'll be a flat cobblestone area across about as far as here, and that's about as far as I can actually go in a flat area before it's going to actually collide with rolling stock and locomotives underneath. This bit of cobblestone area will probably have to go, and the hill will extend out so that we've got more of a smooth running hill down to about this area here. So I don't mind it when these kind of wee challenges crop up every now and then. I think it sort of adds to the interest of the, you know, the model railroading exercise in a way, because when I encountered this, it, you know, becomes a puzzle, and so in it being a puzzle, it's there for me to solve in some shape or form. So I'll leave it there for this particular episode. In the next episode, we'll continue on with developing the scenic side of this further. So this particular build might straddle over a few episodes. So I certainly hope you've enjoyed this episode and gained some insight and inspiration into your modelling endeavours. And once again, a huge thank you to all of the likes and also all the people who have commented on my videos as time has gone by. I do apologise if I can't get to everyone and respond to every comment, but I certainly try to get to as many comments as possible. So don't forget to like, and if you're not subscribed, click that subscribe button and of course you'll get updates whenever a new episode comes out. So I'll sign off for now. Take care everyone, and do look after yourselves, and I will catch you next time. Bye for now.